Hello there.
Hello.
What a splendid sight. Stop nudging me. Well, tomorrow is October the 14th, and it marks the 900th anniversary of one of the most famous battles in English history, the Battle of Hastings in 1066, when the Norman armies came swarming up the beaches at Hastings and beat Harold's English army.
Well, these aren't Norman knights, they're Plantagenet knights, and the Bexhill Round Table are putting on a special pageant on Saturday in Battle in Sussex to mark the anniversary celebrations, and these knights will be taking part in a big jousting display.
So were the horses, they're nudging me now. Well, the costumes are absolutely splendid, particularly the suits of armour, and in particular the visors, because that's a very important part of a knight's armour, so that his face is fully protected, and if he's got slits for the eyes, and those small star patterns on it are actually cut out so that he can breathe once he's inside it. The horses have got the full trappings on, very splendid, coming down the sides there, and the actual lances, which they're going to use, believe it or not, are 12 feet long. There they are, and with quite a nasty-looking point on the end. I certainly wouldn't like to be a knight in armour facing one of those with your opposition coming at you at about 30 miles an hour.
I think I would either. Well, they're really very splendid uniforms. If you do happen to find that you're anywhere near battle in Sussex next Saturday, I should certainly go along and have a look at the jousting display. Well, tomorrow they're bringing out some stamps to mark the battle, and they're all based on scenes from the Bayeux Tapestry. For instance, there's this 1 and threepenny stamp, and this is printed in red, lavender, olive green, brown, black and gold, which shows the battle in action. And on top of the casualty on the left, the Queen's head has been printed in gold. Well, this is only the second time the Queen's head has been shown in gold. Well, the head is in gold again on the sixpenny stamp, which shows one of Duke William's invasion ships crossing the Channel from France. There'll also be a block of 6 fourpenny stamps in 9 colours, and the block shows a complete battle scene from the Bayeux Tapestry. Well, if you're going to buy this block for your collection, whatever you do, when you put it into your album, don't separate these stamps up, because keep it in the block, otherwise you'll find that they'll lose their value. Well, we'll be buying them tomorrow for the Blue Peter album, and a set of stamps like these make a really good souvenir of the anniversary of the Battle of Hastings. But if you can't quite remember what it's all about, then here's John to tell you.
I'll tell her the Battle of Hastings has happened in days long gone by, when Duke William became King of England and Harold got shot in the eye. It were this way. One day in October, the Duke, who were always a toff, having no battles on at the moment, had given his lads a day off. They'd all taken boats to go fishing, when some chap in Conqueror's ear said, "Let's go put breeze up yon Saxons," said Bill. "By gum, that's an idea." Then turning around to his soldiers, he lifted his big Norman voice, shouting, "Hands up, who's coming to England?" That was swank, because they hadn't no choice. They started away about tea time, and the sea was so calm and so still. And at 10:15 the next morning, they arrived at a place called Bexhill. King Harold came up as they landed, his face full of venom and hate. He said, "If you've come for regatta, you've got here just 6 weeks too late." At this, William rose, cool but haughty, and said, "Give us none of your cheek. You best get your throne re-upholstered. I'll be wanting to use it next week." When Harold heard this here defiance, with rage he turned purple and blue, and shouted some rude words in Saxon, to which William answered, "And you?" 'Twas a beautiful day for a battle. The Normans set off with a will, and when both sides was duly assembled, they tossed for the top of the hill. King Harold, he won the advantage. On hilltop he took up his stand, with his knaves and his cads all around him, on his horse, with his hawk in his hand. But Normans had nought in their favour. Chance of a victory seemed small, for the slope of the field was against them, and the wind in their faces and all. But kick-off was sharp at 2:30, and as soon as whistle had went, both sides started banging each other till swineherds could hear 'em in Kent. Well, Saxons had best line of forwards, armed both with buckler and sword, but Normans had best combination, and when half-time came, nobody'd scored. So the Duke called his cohorts together and said, "Let's pretend that we're beat. Once we get Saxons down on the level, we'll cut off their means of retreat." So they ran, and the Saxons ran after just exactly as William had planned, leaving Harold alone on the hilltop on his horse with his hawk in his hand. When Conqueror saw what had happened, a bow and an arrow he drew. He went right up to Harold and shot him. He were offside. But what could they do? But Normans turned round in a fury and gave back both parry and thrust, till fighting were all over, bar shouting, and you couldn't see Saxons for dust. Well, after the battle were over, they found Harold so stately and grand, sitting there with an eye full of arrow, on his horse, with his hawk in his hand.
So that's what happened. Is anything about that in my history book? About you? Very good. Ah. Well, now, you remember the other day we showed you this locomotive. It's a Class A2, number 60532, and it's wearing the nameplate Blue Peter. Well, we've had lots of letters about it saying what a terrible shame it is. It's shortly going to be scrapped. Well, I'm afraid that doesn't only apply to the Blue Peter, it applies to steam locomotives all over the country. And we've had one plea from the heart from Shanklin in the Isle of Wight. Where it is? Yes, it comes from Neil O'Leary. And he says, "Dear Chris, Val and John, I'm writing to tell you that, in a way, make a request, because our railways down here on the island are slowly closing bit by bit. First, the Ride to Cowes, second, the Shanklin to Ventnor, and now they have the cheek to take away our old 044 T-class power classification OPT steam engines, one of which is nearly over 100 years old, and put horrible old London Underground electric engines instead. Please, please try and do something, if you can," which I doubt very much. I have put a photograph of the Chail number 31. They're all named after towns and villages on the island. Yours very sincerely, Neil O'Leary. P.S. Please try and do something if you possibly can. Well, British Rail run the trains all over the country, as you know, and I'm afraid with this sort of modernization, there is nothing we can do. All we can do is sort of let you know, give as much publicity to a locomotive when it's going to be scrapped. Sometimes they are saved by locomotive preservation societies or by private individuals, and then sometimes they come out of retirement for a special trip. So if you're lucky, you can still ride on one of the rarely famous old locomotives.
Well, this is the Flying Scotsman, the most famous steam locomotive in the world. And today, she's going to make a very last non-stop steam run to commemorate the old days of steam on the London to Brighton line. Well, the train is packed full of railway enthusiasts, but I've got special permission to ride on the footplate. So it's very nearly time to be off, so I better climb aboard. It looks strange, seeing the great plumes of smoke and steam on Victoria Station, where there have been nothing but diesel and electric trains for as long as I can remember. There wasn't much room on the footplate, so I sat in the fireman's seat. He didn't need it because he was already stoking up the fire, even though we'd only just left. We were still gathering speed when we passed the 4 belching chimneys of Battersea Power Station. The engine is a 462 Gresley A3 Pacific, and with her tender weighs over 150 tons. The driver was constantly adjusting the controls, so he didn't have time, like me, to wave to all the enthusiasts who turned out to see the Flying Scotsman making this historic run. I thought it was about time I helped the fireman stoke the fire, so it was sweaters off and down to work. The engine uses 45 pounds of coal a mile, so between Victoria and Brighton, about a ton of it had to be shoveled, which was pretty hard work. We were now travelling at 60 miles an hour, but I wasn't watching the speedo. I had to keep my eye on the boiler pressure gauge, and to keep pressure up, I had to keep on shoveling. We were now doing nearly 80 miles an hour, which, although wasn't really fast for this engine, that was the first in Britain to officially record 100 miles an hour in 1934, it was fast enough for me because I had the job of keeping the fire going. As well as using a lot of coal, the Flying Scotsman uses over 30 gallons of water a mile. So on this journey, she would use about 1,800 gallons. As we were now approaching Brighton, the driver started to slow the train down. And to let everyone know we were coming, I gave a blast on the whistle. Driver Donald Finch eased on the brakes as we steamed majestically towards the crowd that was waiting on Brighton station to welcome the most famous steam locomotive in the world. Well, that was absolutely marvellous, and it only took 67 minutes to get down here, which is marvellous considering this engine is 43 years old. Well, I've had quite a lot of work to do on the way down, so you can see I'm filthy, but I wouldn't have missed it for the world. I think I look more like a chimney sweep than a stoker on the Flying Scotsman.
Well, what a fantastic experience. I'd love to have travelled.
Great fun,
marvellous. I wouldn't have missed it for anything.
Lucky, she looks so gorgeous too. But you know, of course, the Flying Scotsman isn't owned by British Rail now. She's owned privately by Mr. Alan Pegler. He lets her out 4 runs just like this one.
Well, I expect you've noticed in the last few days it started getting just a little bit colder, so I think it's probably time we put Fred away into hibernation.
Well, I've got Fred's box here, and it's full of hay. You can use, of course, straw or wood wool or leaves, but mind you, you must make sure that the leaves are really dry. It's quite a good, strong cardboard box, but if you're going to put it where there's damp, it's best to use a wooden box. And also, if there are rats about, don't leave it on the floor, in fact.
Well, so that they can nibble through it.
Yes. Would you like pop Fred
Well,
in?
here's Fred. Let's just have a last long look at him, shall we? Your eyes are right, Fred? Yes. Looking a bit sleepy already. Make sure he's got nothing on his eyes.
Still got his name on his side, too.
Yes, a bit faded now, but there he is. Say goodbye to everyone, Fred.
Goodbye, Fred.
That's it. We'll see you in the spring. Now, the great thing to remember here is that the box has got to be big enough, so you've got at least 2 inches all the way around, and on top and below him. You see what we've done now? We've got straw, hay here, isn't it?
Hay, yes.
Put it in the middle, like that. There you are, Fred. There. And there's plenty of room all the way around him now to form a nice insulation. So you tip him in there.
It's very cosy, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay.
I wouldn't mind being in there myself.
Next bit goes on top now, John. That's right.
Put the
Pack
hay
it
back
down.
on. Round the sides.
Yeah. Now, you notice that we've got holes in the box, too. If I lift that up, you see the holes there? We've done that purposely so that it's not airtight, so he can breathe. Right,
He
fold
looks
that
nice
one
and
in.
snug, doesn't he? So it's goodbye to Fred for another few months. We won't see him again now till the spring.
Well,
will we?
no, what I shall do is I shall just open him up in about a fortnight's time.
Make sure he's all
to
right.
make sure that he hasn't got too close to one of the edges, because then he could get cold, you see.
Well, now,
And
Fred...
the other thing to remember is to put him indoors where it's going to be warm. Put him outside in the garden shed or in the garage where it's cool.
Right.
Splendid. Well, now Fred's settled down for his long winter sleep, I've got news about another little animal we haven't heard about for quite some time. Wonder if you can guess who it is. It's a dog, and it's not Petra, Patch or Honey, but a boxer puppy.
One afternoon, Bengo had just settled down for his usual afternoon nap. Suddenly, he heard a high-pitched barking coming from the street. That voice has a familiar sound, thought Bengo. So he rushed to his observation post by the window and looked outside. He was right. It was his friend Pepe the Chihuahua, and in a very agitated state indeed. So he hurried out to meet him. Hello, Pepe, what's all the excitement about? There's a great big tiger in my garden with long whiskers and fierce yellow eyes and long sharp teeth and... Take it easy now, Pepe. Are you quite sure it wasn't the cat from next door? Asked Bengo. If you don't believe me, come and see for yourself, said Pepe. So Bengo followed the excited Pepe to his home to see exactly what was going on. Suddenly, he stopped and looked thoughtful. Supposing there really was a tiger in Pepe's garden. I think we'll ask Droopy to come with us too, he said to Pepe. But Droopy wasn't at all keen at the prospect of a tiger hunt, but he didn't like to admit it, as he was the biggest and strongest of Bengo's friends, so he joined the hunting party too. When they arrived at Pepe's garden, Droopy took one good sniff and looked extremely alarmed. "Stand well back, everyone. There really is a tiger in the garden, as sure as my name is Droopy," he whispered. Then, nose to the ground, he followed the scent, while Bengo and Pepe took cover behind a rose bush. "He's very brave. That tiger might attack him," whispered Pepe. Suddenly there was a terrible noise from behind the garden shed. "Quick, Droopy must need our help," cried Bengo. So they ran to the garden shed, where Droopy met them looking very amused. "Want to see your tiger? Well, take a look in that apple tree," he said. And there he was. He was a tiger, all right, but a baby one, not much bigger than Bengo, and he looked very scared indeed. "There's no need to be nervous. Come down and play with us," called Bengo. But the tiger cub only climbed higher and higher up the trunk of the apple tree. "Perhaps we can shake him down," said Droopy. He pushed at the tree, helped by Bengo and Pepe, but they were just bombarded with apples. "We'll never get him down that way," said Bengo, "but I've an idea how to handle this on my own." Telling Droopy and Pepe to hide in the garden shed, Bengo ran down the street as fast as he could until he came to the park nearby, where he made a beeline for one of the benches with a sign in large letters saying, "Wet Paint." He jumped onto the bench, then rolled over and over on his back. "Get out of it!" yelled the park keeper. And Bengo jumped from the bench. Ringed with wet paint, he ran as fast as his legs could carry him back to Pepe's garden. Then he crept slowly towards the apple tree. With the rings of paint on his back, he looked quite tiger-like. The tiger cub was delighted. He thought he recognized an old friend. So he climbed all the way down the trunk to the ground, where Bengo was waiting to greet him. The cub followed Bengo into the kitchen, where they lapped up a large bowl of milk together. "Now it's time to go home to Mum," said Bengo. "Follow me." And the tiger cub followed Bengo along the road without any fuss or bother. "Look at that dog taking a tiger for a walk," shouted a small boy, and people turned and stared at the amazing sight. Bengo didn't stop until he reached the entrance to the zoo. The keepers were delighted to see the lost tiger cub safely back home, and so were his mother and his brother and sister too. It was a very happy reunion. Then the keepers made a big fuss of Bengo for finding the cub. The head keeper gave him a good bath to wash off the paint, and as a special reward, Bengo was given a large bone. It was so big that he could hardly carry it home.
Well, I think that was very clever of Bengo. And we've got some dogs here that are quite a lot larger than he is, because we've reached the letter O in our dog's alphabet. Quite sure you'll know what they are. They are, of course, Old English sheepdogs, sometimes called bobtails. Now, the one I've got here is Wenalt Sit Down Mary, or Bella for short. She's very young. She's only 15 months old. She's about 26 inches in height, and she weighs about 112 pounds. And then over here, this great enormous one is Borcott Blue Boy, and he's 6 years old, a lot shaggier and quite a lot bigger. And he's quite used to being on in a television studio because he's appeared on lots of television advertisements before. Well, now, they've got this extraordinary sort of long hair, rather a sort of beetle fringe, actually. And in fact, I believe that Paul McCartney has just bought one of these Old English sheepdogs. And underneath this, there's a very squarish skull with a long, strong, rather squarish jaw. And if I can just lift up, you should be able somewhere there to see his eyes. There, you can just see one. And they should have dark or wall eyes, and they should have an intelligent expression, though quite honestly how you can see an expression under all that hair, I'm not quite sure. They have large, wide black noses, and they've got not terribly large ears, but very sort of floppy ears that flop down at the sides so that it all goes in with the great shaggy hair. And he really is very splendid, this dog. Now, their legs, especially the forelegs, are very strong and straight, with small, round feet. Again, very sturdy, and they have sort of strong shoulders here. And they've got a very springy sort of body, very compact body, and quite deep chests here. And, of course, no tails. Well, sometimes they're born without tails. Sometimes they have them docked when they're about 4 days old. Now, you can get them in quite a lot of different colours. There's grey or grizzle, blue or blue merle, and you either get them like that, or you can get them with white or without white. But whatever happens, they shouldn't have a tendency to brown. And they've got this very splendid shaggy coat, and it's very harsh fur, in fact, and they should have underneath a really deep sort of pile of waterproof fur. This sometimes is lost if you get too much grooming, and we've lost Ben.
We've lost Ben, but we've gained 4
vanished.
more, and we've got another 4 to come, which John will bring in, because Ben and Bella are the proud parents of a litter of 8 puppies. They're just 6 weeks old now. There are 3 girls, Dainty, Daisy and Diana, and 5 boys, who are Ben, Bob, Bronco, Buster and Billy. You got the food there, John?
Yep.
Oh,
I don't think they need it. They find their own food.
Try this. That's it. There you are. You get stuck into that. That's much nicer. Well, you can see they're still feeding off their mother, but they're getting 4 additional feeds as well per day. They get milk and biscuit and egg in the morning. Then at lunchtime they get raw meat, and then at tea time they have special puppy biscuit and meat and milk then, and more raw meat later on in the evening. And of course Bella, now that she's feeding the puppies, she needs extra food, so she gets 3 big meals a day. And one of the largest meals she has, of course, is the complete sheep's head in the night time. That's her main meal.
Well, they're still used as working dogs, and Ben here is no exception, and is still very good at rounding up the cattle on the farm where he lives.
You'll notice, too, that the colouring of the puppies is very, very much darker than that of the parents. That's when they grow up, they will become rather like mum and dad. They're very, very good companions, these dogs. They're very friendly with children. And the only thing is they need a lot of grooming. You can imagine when they're molting, there's a terrific amount coming out. And you've got to give them lots of exercise.
Well, they're very docile dogs indeed. Lucky to have one, but I think really you should live in the country, shouldn't you, Chris?
Beautiful.
So you can give them lots and lots and lots of exercise.
Very
Super.
sturdy.
Very friendly and nice. Well, that brings us to the end of our programme. On Monday, we'll be telling you the results of the Spot the Tune competition.
And we'll be having episode 1 of a brand new story.
See you Monday, then.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.